Mo, how's it going today?
It's great, Terry. Like when we met, I felt your energy and I was like really excited about the show when you talked about it. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. I mean, there's a lot I want to say about our first interaction as well, but let's give everyone some context first. So, Mo, who are you?
Oh, I'll try not to keep it to 20 minutes. No, I love teaching people how to grow businesses. It's what I do all the time. It's what's underneath that is having a big impact on them, because then I get this amplified effect of hearing how they had an impact on the world. And I just wake up in the morning and sometimes can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about ideas that, our clients have had. They're going to help their clients.
Yeah. I have that same problem too, where I'll wake up at like 3 a.m. with all these ideas I have. And it's funny because years ago I would wake up with anxiety, like worried about the next day coming. And now I wake up excited, but I still can't sleep. So it's like I'm still not sleeping, but it's for good reason. And on your one, when we met, I did one of my favorite tactics that I leverage when I meet people for the first time. Instead of saying, "What do you do?" I asked what you do for fun. And your response just blew my mind. If you don't mind just sharing the story in regards to your ultimate Frisbee
Yeah.
activities, that would be amazing.
Yeah, well, I love ultimate frisbee. Like I started playing later in life, but then got involved in some club teams and did really well nationally. And I was on one team that won a world's championship on the island of Sardinia in Italy, which was really cool because I was on a stacked team. Like the best way to win a world championship is to be just barely good enough to be on a stacked team, and then you can have a great time. But I love ultimate because it's so dang hard. A lot of people don't know it's on almost a soccer-sized field, a little bit smaller, 7-on-7. You've got to play every position. If your person goes deep, you got to go deep and be like like a defensive back in American football. If they come under, you've got to be under. If they get the disc, you've got to guard them like they're a quarterback, if that makes sense. So you end up with these like basketball-like movements, but on a huge field. And you've got to be in ridiculously good shape. And also it's a brainy sport where you got to figure out how can I be in the right position so to defend or do whatever I'm trying to do. So it's got this thing as a wrap where you just a couple hours goes by and you don't even know where it went by and you're really tired and you love it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you mentioned it's kind of brainy, so I would not excel at that. But I think one thing that I can appreciate about that is you're obviously an entrepreneur. You're very successful, yet you still have time to compete internationally in Ultimate Frisbee. Whereas there are other people I know, whether they have a corporate job or they're an entrepreneur, they just never seem to have enough time. So it's clear that you put a lot of intention into how you run your life. And that's why you're able to travel internationally to play Frisbee, Ultimate Frisbee, I apologize, as well as inspire those around you. So I'd love to hear more about how you just got started with your business in the first place.
Yeah, I'll even show you. So the origin story is sort of like my initial part of my career was on rails. I was an actuary. And you probably haven't had too many actuaries on the show. Okay, here's one. And when you have to take all these exams that take like almost a decade to get through, or at least they did in the 80s and the 90s when I went through, you really can't think about anything else. You're just trying to stay married and pass the exams and do a decent job at work. Well, the week after I finished that last exam, it took 24 back in the day, my consulting firm moved me to a production role where basically I was called a managing consultant. I was maybe 30 years old or around that. I'm doing work that most 50 and 60-year-olds are doing. And I now have to represent everything we do globally across hundreds of offerings to C-level people at organizations. And man, I was absolutely petrified. I had to go from being a deep technical expert, an actuary with a green visor, to this broad-based consultant that had to talk about anything around people and talent-related things, HR consulting. And that fear just prompted me to try to learn, how do you do this relationship skill stuff? Mm-hmm. And it was just super, super, super hard. It was hard to do it as fast as I felt like I needed to. Anyway, through all that, I sort of fell in love not just with business development, because I figured out you could do it in a way that everybody wins at every turn. The relationships are always paramount. And then as I had success with that, I fell in love with teaching other people business development and relationship skills. So anyway, it was about 20 years ago when we started Bunnell Idea Group. And it turns out other people want to grow a business in a relationship-centric way. And now, like you've gone through the program, 50,000 people have gone through some element of that all over the world. And it's just fun to grow a business that helps people help people.
Yeah, your training was amazing, and I'm glad I went. I had a lot of great takeaways, but one of the main ones was just focusing on daily progress and intentionality. If you just have those two combined, you will see results. But I think often we don't start with the intentionality. We're just like, got to make money. Like, that's the intention, which is not too sophisticated. And then the daily progress, we don't recognize like the small wins that we're having each day, like sending out that email, that DM, whatever it is, that is a win. And you're making progress, but if you don't take time to recognize that, it feels like you haven't done anything. And that's how you burn out. That's how you feel frustrated. But like, you got to stack those small wins to get the big ones. So it was great to have that as a takeaway and be around other people who just had their eyes open as well during your seminar. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we can pull some research from that exact thing. One of my favorite researchers is Teresa Mabile at Harvard, and she coined a term called the progress principle. And she found, and I think this is the mind-blowing part for me, Terry, when I read this, she found that not only are the most productive people folks that celebrate incremental progress, that sort of makes sense, but she found in her research that also the happiest people are the folks that celebrate incremental progress. And she found in her research, like real specifically, with simple actions like writing a to-done list at the end of the day. Or at the end of the week, reflecting on what had happened. Yeah, maybe the meeting didn't go great Tuesday, but these other 6 meetings resulted in some kind of real positive advancement. And somehow just writing down in a few sentences, maybe in a journal or reflecting on a walk, what progress was made during this last time period. And she found the two that correlated most to productivity and happiness was doing that on a daily basis and doing it on a weekly basis. I think it's just super simple, but also nobody does it, but it's so powerful.
Why do you think, because I don't have an answer to this question, there's a lot of best practices out there that are super simple that people don't know, that people don't do. Like, you should hydrate. Simple things like that. People are like, nah, I'm good. Right. You should exercise. You should meditate. You should journal. Like, basic things that are very powerful but very rarely utilized. In your opinion, why does the average person not take action on these best practices?
I think it comes down to living your life in one of 3 ways. I had a really close friend share this with me, and he said, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks one time. He said, you can live your life in one of 3 ways: drift, driven, or design. Drift, he said, is what almost everybody does. It's where you answer emails all day, you go to meetings, you do the things. But all of a sudden, 10 years or 20 years can go by and you're not really where you want to be. Driven is where you get really excited about one area of your life, maybe work, but you do it at the sacrifice of another area of life, like maybe home. I've seen people over-engineer their life towards being a triathlete. It takes so much time to train, other parts of your life can get sacrificed. Or they get so passionate about a nonprofit or a cause that it impacts the other area of life. But the driven mindset is sort of like you really do have high productivity in one area, but it sacrifices another. And the third way, he said, you live your life is by design. And that's where you actually write down and map out. I know you've done this. Like, you figure out where do you want to be in 10 years, and then you're always making this consistent progress towards it and reflecting on that like we talked about. So finally, with that, back to your question, why do most people drift? I just think it's easy. Autopilot is the enemy. It's so easy to spend your day going, wow, I have 13 fewer emails than I had at the beginning of the day. It was a good day. Yeah. But is that reactive stuff the right things to do? And I think a much more powerful way to live your life is to map out, where do I want things to look like in 10 years? To back that up and write down, what does that look like at the end of this year? And then to bring that all the way back and say, what proactive things do I need to do this week to make that progress? And then have all of that in alignment, and then just you keep doing the little proactive things. Maybe it's only an hour a week you spend on that, but there's some kind of time allotted each week that you're focused on the long-term game, and doing that over and over gets you to where you want to be.
Yeah. It goes back to daily progress and intentionality. And
it does.
This reminds me of the book, The One Thing. I'm not sure if you've read that before, but
Can
I
I
see
just
you're
say
lighting
this,
up right
that-
now. Yeah.
Oh man! So my publisher for my new book, Give to Grow, is called Bard Press. They published The One Thing. So I
Okay.
know Jay Papasan really well as one of the two authors, and what's neat about Bard Press is they only do one book a year. They're the
Oh,
only
wow.
publisher in the world. They choose the author as much as the author chooses them. So as I wrote Give to Grow, I literally had the one thing in my mind of how I wanted it to look like, how I wanted it to be dense with insights, a fast read, enjoyable, and all that stuff. So anyway, I had to blurt that out because if you could have said one book that I look up to, it's The One Thing.
Awesome. So we'll unpack the theme of The One Thing real quick, and then let's talk about Give to Grow as well. So
Yeah.
let me know if I messed this up, but essentially you start with a focusing question where you think to yourself, what's the one thing I can do, such by doing so, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? And you can look at that from a 90-day view, right? What's the one thing this quarter, this month, this week, today, this hour, right now? And whenever you realize, hey, I am not doing the most important thing, you can just snap out of it. And to add on to that, it goes on to say, like, until your one thing is done, everything else is just a distraction. And I just love that approach because you're getting all these emails, all these messages, so on and so forth. Hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So on and so forth. But it's like, wait, until my one thing is done, that's a distraction. It's a distraction disguised as an opportunity. But right now, in this current moment, it's a distraction. So I just love being able to lock in like that.
Yeah, and what I think of with that, and there's actually a diagram in the book, The One Thing, that shows this, but compounding growth, exponential growth is what that's tapping into. Because just think about like the stock market. If you invest in a stock early when you're 20 years old or whatever, if that grows at 8 or 10% a year, it's like massively more valuable. Or said this way, if you make the same investment from age 20 to 30 for 10 years and you never invest again, it's worth far more than if you invested from age 30 to 70 the exact same amount for like 40 years. So the idea of the one thing is you're always choosing things that have exponential growth potential. You're always choosing things that have a compounding effect. And when you stack those little 5-minute actions over and over again over even a year, let alone a decade, they just start to pay off massively.
Yeah. That's why when I consult people, like, I don't have any quick fixes. They're like, hey, I saw you're on a TV show. How'd that happen? I saw you spoke at Berkshire Hathaway. How'd that happen? I'm like, well, let's go back to 2015 when I got fired and didn't want to get a real job, so I started consulting. It's like I can't like easily replicate these results. I can share my approach, I can share my mindset, I can share my discipline and my routines that I have, but it's like it's not going to happen overnight, and otherwise it's like you're just going to fizzle out. So I appreciate you bringing that up, but let's hear more about Give to Grow.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so excited about it. I really think it's our best work ever. So what we did was we took every single thing we've learned from over 260 scientific studies we found that apply to relationship or business development or business growth. We took everything we learned from training 50,000 people just like you, in classes and workshops and speeches and things like that. And we synthesized it down to 4 big ideas. And these are sections in the book. Idea 1 is, what does it take for somebody to have exponential success? And it's going through something called the shift. And that's what we call where somebody takes a very deep core expertise, their gift to the world, but they also add relationship skills onto that. So that we can go deeper on that if you want. That's thing number 1. Thing number 2 out of the 4 is we did a bunch of proprietary research and we found how many lies we tell ourselves that get in the way of our success. We found out there's 5. These attack everybody. They're never over. You can mash one down with a mallet. It'll pop back the next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. You got to, and we'll tell these lies to ourselves in our head, and there's nobody else to tell us they're not true. So we believe them, and we hold us in our tracks. So that's thing 2 is discovering the 5 lies and how to overcome them. Thing 3 is we decoded the 4. This is based on a ton of research, peer-reviewed, good university peer-reviewed stuff. But we found there's 4 major gifts we can give customers and clients. So knowing what those are and in what order helps you start to orchestrate a future that's helpful to them, helpful to you, and your business just happens to grow. And then the 4th section we called the impact. And that's where we decoded how do you think in the moment in the short term and in the long term so that you can continue on this path and live by design as opposed to drift or driven.
Yeah. I love it how it's based in science, because there's often like books that come out. It's like, oh yeah, here's my idea. This worked for me. It's probably gonna work for all of you too. It's like, no, dude, like that doesn't feel like it's gonna work in the wild. But it also feels very story driven and tactical as well. So I think those three elements are what we need, because there's a lot of books out there. It's like you feel great afterwards, but it's kind of fluff and you don't get great results from it afterwards.
Yep.
But I can tell you put a lot of thought into this. So I'm looking forward to diving into it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I measure my time, and just in like 6 big buckets as I manage the business in my life, because I feel like if you don't know where your time is going, you don't know where your life is going. So I actually looked it up Friday, and so we're taping this on a Friday, so a week ago. And I have up till last Friday, it'll be more now, but I had 757 hours in on the Give to Go project. And as you and I are recording this, the book's not even out yet. It comes out in about 4 weeks. So I'll have easily 1,000 hours in on that project. But if you go back to your one thing idea, where there's only one thing that's paramount, the thing about like a book is when you've got a book done, you have instant credibility. It'll take me 1,000 hours to get it, all the way to where it's on, people can buy it. But then in 5 seconds, I've got the ability to hand this to somebody I just met and impact their life forever. And that's a very compounding growth, leverageable thing. So it was really hard to find 1,000 hours while I'm running a business and leading workshops and flying around the world and things like that. But how happy am I now, 4 weeks from launch, that I've got that opportunity in front of me for years to come.
Yeah, that strategic patience, as my friend Dory Clark refers to it as, is extremely valuable. And again, if you're just trying to like get by, you don't have time for that, right? You're like, I just have to pay my rent or my mortgage or whatever. So being able to zoom out and saying like 10 years from now, what will I be proud that I spent my time on, like this year, this month, this quarter, whatever it is? Like that's the way I think about it. So like can align there. But what I want to do now is make this even more, I would say, almost digestible for our audience by understanding some of the challenges that you've gone through in building this, because obviously it hasn't come easy. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing, would love to hear that.
Well, and you prepped me well, and I think the idea, let me test this, is like to pick a time in my life where things were not going so great. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a polite way to say it, but yeah, that'll be beneficial.
Well, how about I share what I consider to be one of the dumbest things I ever did that almost destroyed our family? How about that?
You share that, and everybody listening, please vote if it does sound dumb or not, because I feel like it might have been a learning experience. But if you think it's dumb, let us know. Dumb or learning experience, please vote after the episode.
Or both. I think it's both. So if you can imagine an actuary, I took all the exams to be an actuary. Of course, I don't practice like that anymore. It's been decades since I have. But took all these exams. It took like 10 years. And basically, you are trained to be the best financial expert of all time. It's so many things you have to learn financially on this thing. Investments, long-term pro formas, projections, statistics, all kinds of stuff. So if we drop into early September 2008, I had left my organization. We had formed Bunnell Idea Group, and I think in 2005. So we had some initial success. I didn't have an employee yet or anything like that. Now we've got 20 some people that are on the team, but things were working, and I decided, here's the dumb move, that because I think of my growing up in a small town in Indiana, this idea of pay off your house is a really good idea. I paid off our entire home equity line of credit and put some extra money down on the principal for our home. Mm. I took our cash in the bank and brought it down to almost nothing. And my thinking, Terry, was like, it's no big deal. I got this checkbook sitting in my desk for our home equity line of credit. I can just get money out anytime I want. But, this makes me sleep at night because I've paid a big chunk of my house off. Well, then the government runs out of money. The banking freeze happens. We get a letter in the mail from our bank that says, hey, we love you, but your home equity line of credit is frozen. and you can't get the money out. And my wife is a competitive endurance horse racer. So she races 50 and 100-mile horse races. So I had to watch the kids because of a bunch of stuff they were doing that weekend, and she went to this race and did great. I spent every moment I wasn't in front of our 2 young kids analyzing our money and our cash flows. And when she came back, Terry, I had to tell her that we had 100 days of cash if we didn't change something. And because of the financial crisis, some of my projects had just ended. So little income, 100 days of cash, no buffer. What are we going to do? And through that time period, she decided we should sell our horse. If you can imagine something that she was attached to other than me, the closest thing, and maybe more, was her horse. She had to sell the horse. We sold the horse trailer. We did all kinds of other things. We were not going to pull the kids out of private school. We were not. That was like a non-negotiable. Man, I don't know what I was going to do. And the guilt and the feeling of failure as somebody who was running Becky runs different parts of the family. I was running finances. To know that I put ourselves in that situation, I could barely live with myself.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, because like losing a pet is extremely challenging for anyone who's gone through it, obviously. And I'm not saying a horse is a pet, but it's like you have that relationship that seems very similar to an extent. And when you're doing it,
it's even more so because they're like a team, because they go on these races and they rely on each other and they get to know each other. It's like a pet times 50. It's crazy.
Yeah. How did you feel even suggesting that as an option? Like, hey, I think here's the path to, recovering our finances is unfortunately selling. Like, how did you feel before you had that conversation with your wife?
Well, I didn't suggest that. I couldn't. I didn't even know what I was going to suggest. I just knew my reaction to stress and to a bad situation is to work harder. Like that's just like, I'll just work more. So I just knew I had to hit the marketplace and I had to help our clients and I had to find new ways of generating revenue. I was a little less focused on dropping the expense side other than subscriptions and hey, we can cut out cable and stuff like that. Yeah. There was no way I was going to bring up selling her horse, but she felt like that was the right move. I mean, we really were in a bad spot and it probably was necessary. We ended up getting through it because I created this whole gamification of outreach. And Terry, I just started contacting hundreds of people and saying, I can help you with this. I can help you with that. And I lowered my bar way down into what I was willing to do because I had to. Yeah. I did not want to pull those kids out of school, basically, out of the schools they were in. So anyway, we sold some, over a couple months, we sold the horse. Boy, that was a tough day. But I was able to sell bring in a whole bunch of business. And within 9 months, we were fine again. But that initial period was brutal. It was just brutal.
Yeah. Did you feel, and I don't mean to keep on poking at this, but did you feel a bit like almost like a fraud? Because as an actuary, this is your thing. You understand what's coming down the road and what's going on. And obviously no one saw the financial crisis coming, but did you feel any kind of devaluation of your expertise at all, or how was that?
Yeah, it was more gut and basics. I just felt like an idiot. I didn't.
So we're back to being dumb again. Okay.
Yes, right. It was just a stupid move. I just didn't need to do that. I could have kept the money in a checking account or a savings account, or I could have. Our interest rates weren't even that high. I could have put it in a high yield savings account or a CD or something like that. The gap, the amount of flexibility I had if I kept the money was massive, and the gap between what I saved, if you will, by paying off that, it just didn't make any financial sense at all. We can think of it this way. There's and this is actually some actuarial science here, but it's simple. The simplified version is the risk of failure of a business. It's a thing you have to learn to manage insurance companies if you're an actuary. It's I forget what it's called. It's probability of ruin is actually a statistical model and things like that. There's a whole bunch of things that it's based off. But basically, if you do two things right, you're going to be able to not you're not going to ruin yourself. An entire company or a business you're growing. You just need two things. You need savings in the bank, and the more the better. And you need some type of predictability of cash flows where like the less lumpy, the more predictable, the better. And I had lever one was cash in the bank. I had plenty. And I just gave it up. And I'd learned that. I had like done statistically modeling and passed exams on this. So anyway, I just felt the core of it was I just felt like I can't believe I did that. Like there was no logical reason to do it. So anyway, reacted with working harder. And then as I came out of it, when we think back to Give to Grow in the book and deepening relationships, without telling Becky, because I just had this hope and a prayer, I just felt like maybe this will work. I kept in touch with the woman that bought her horse. Yeah. And I just checked in and how's it going? And we miss Bailey. Bailey's the horse's name, but want to make sure that you're having a great experience. So I just kept in touch with her. And as our financial situation strengthened again, maybe about 9 months out from D-Day, if you will, then I called her one day and I said, hey, I'm sure this will never make sense. I know you've got Bailey's literally one of the best endurance racing horses in the country. And I'm sure you'd never want to give him back up. But if the time was ever right, I just would want to be your first call. Mm-hmm. And she, on that call, you could almost hear her getting a little emotional. And she said something like, I've always felt Bailey needs to be with Becky.
Wow.
And we kept talking, and a month or so later, she just sold Bailey. She could have sold Bailey back for 4 times what we sold it to. She said the exact same amount, not a penny more. Bailey deserves to be with Becky. And I'm literally looking out in our, we have a pasture to my left that you can't see, but Bailey's out there. And so they were reunited back at the end, but boy, that was a heck of a journey.
Mm-hmm. 2 things. One that reminds me of Sylvester Stallone selling his dog so he could make the movie Rocky and then eventually buying it back because he was so broke.
I forgot about that. That's the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, so I hear the theme song playing as you're telling the story. But also, I mean, we're talking about books, and one of my favorite books is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And it's funny because it feels like egos would encourage you to pay off the house. You want to have the American dream, books, like everything's paid off and whatnot. And then you quickly overcame that because you did not let your ego get in the way of grinding and saying, look, I got to make some money. Like I will do things I'm not willing to do. So I'm going to say that it was a teachable moment and not a dumbass move. So that's going to be my vote on it. Both. But yeah, we'll leave that for the debate. But
I can't let it go, can I?
You can't. But you've done other great things in life, so it's not like it's hindering you. But another one of my favorite books by Ryan Holiday is called Discipline is Destiny. And you're clearly very disciplined in regards to how you live your life. So what destiny do you want that to lead you to? So what are you looking forward to in the future, more or less?
Actually, I'll go back a few years and then play it forward. It'll all make sense. But after we got through that tough period, and I can say this publicly with a little veil in front of it. We moved to another house and we were upgrading things. It was great. There was a home invasion, and my wife and one of my daughters walked in on it. And through that experience of a young daughter walking in on an active home invasion, she ended up with PTSD. And it was really a hard time. And me leaving was a trigger to prompt PTSD experiences and episodes. And one of the things that helped her was being around horses. So that was like the one main thing we could find that really, it was equine therapy is what it is. And that's what my wife teaches. She's an equine therapist. So we knew a lot about it. Or Becky does. So anyway, through that experience, Becky found a house in town Atlanta where we live, and it's got 12 acres, which is unheard of. And there's a horse pasture in it. So again, through a low point, I respond to these things by hard work. So I decided I've got to have that house for my family. And so I wrote down, I can remember writing down very specifically, I could even go in the other room and find it, but there's this handwritten page I've got of how I wanted my life to look a certain years in the future. So like life by design, like we were talking about. I actually wrote it down. I didn't have a great format for it. I just made it up. But it had 4 major elements. It had what are the themes and the things that we prioritize? What do our day-to-day life look like? What are the relationships that I think we really want to have? And what do I want our finances to look like, both net worth and like cash flow? So those 4 big things are how people think, like in the class that you learned, like strategic themes, practical day-to-day relationships, or empathy and numbers, or in this case, finances. And Terry, like I set this goals for 10 years, and I think it was after 7.5, we hit all those. And we were able to orchestrate a purchase of this property, and then that completely changed the trajectory of the family too, because of all those things we talked about. So anyway, that's like a version of how I want things, but like 10 years ago or whatever, maybe 15. But now I continue to do that same process where once a year I write out what do I want things to look like in 10 years, back it up to the end of this next year, and I really focus on those 4 areas. What are the priorities that I'm able to work on? What's the day-to-day look like? How do our relationships work like? And then I do some economic stuff. And I find that doing that, just this is incredible, powerful way of then figuring out, to your words, what's your one thing in this moment, in the next hour, because I'm always trying to pick things that are going to make that happen.
Yeah. Mo, I can't think of a better way to end off. I mean, it's an amazing action item for all of us to follow. If you're listening and you're not inspired by that, listen to it again, because it's going to be challenging, but it doesn't have to be confusing. And I think having that kind of plan, that vision, and those milestones is how we achieve that. So I want to say thank you for sharing that. And before we do take off, just remind us again about Give to Grow, when that's coming out, as well as how we can learn more from you as well.
Oh, man. Well, Give to Grow, I'm so excited about it. It's very one thing-ish. So as you can imagine, if I wrote it with that in mind, it's like they're a perfect pair, by the way. And Jay Papasan actually has read Give to Grow, loved it. So like I know we're on that track. The number one thing I would give people is free. It's no charge, and it's sort of a no-brainer. We developed a training course around Give to Grow. So the subtitle of Give to Grow, the book, is Invest in Relationships to Build Your Business and Your Career. So we developed this free training course that, it's better if you actually have a copy of the book, Give to Grow, but you can actually go through the training course even without buying the book. Like if you write a book called Give to Grow, you better be giving a lot. So that's what we try to do. So it's got like 50 downloads, worksheets, videos from me, all kinds of stuff. And that's at givetogrow.info. So if the audience goes to givetogrow.info, they'll get the free course. If they want to pick up the book too, all the better. It comes out August 27th, 2024, and it's everywhere books are sold. We just landed a front slot in every single one of the 4 major airport bookstores. We're just getting huge advance orders. So like the buzz in the marketplace around Give to Grow is fantastic. So I couldn't be more excited. But right now, even if you publish this before it's out, givetogrow.info, people can get that free training anytime they want.
Awesome. Mo, thank you for this. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and your guidance as well.
Terry, man, from the moment you walked up to me in the class, I was like, I like this guy. So I've been looking forward to this for 4 months or something. So it's pretty fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, I'm going to stop recording, but this was great.